All right, I think we're live. Somebody talk back to us. Tell us we're live. And thank y'all. So hey, look, I'm better looking than Ardwulf, but not nearly as charismatic. And and joining me, Rocky is here. Our buddy Rocky Mountain Navy is also with us. Mo has threatened to show up and make an appearance at some point. But look, Breezeline shit the bed on Gary, like completely, and he's got no internet service, no ability to do this live. So we're gonna jump in and fill the breach tonight, just to say hi to everybody and give folks a chance to have that usual Monday night war game chat. And where Gary is usually nice and structured and organized and planned and has a topic that makes it at least 5 minutes before the audience drags it off the rails, we're not even pretending, right? We're just gonna let it go off the rails to start with. And so with that in mind, Rocky, how you doing tonight?
Great, everyone. Happy Independence Day. Happy Treason Day if you're British. But yeah, we just had a really great block party going on out here. So this is gonna be 1 hour long because the fireworks will be starting.
Yeah. So Rocky made a good point there. We are gonna stick pretty close to a 1 hour limit on this tonight. We want to wrap it up in time for all the East Coast folks to go catch the start of fireworks, because around 9 o'clock is when it should be dark enough for those things to start launching. Plus, I promised the family that I was going to be done for 9 o'clock to go join them for watching some. I think there's a couple of kids in the neighborhood that are going to try to burn the place down based on the last few nights of just random shelling going off here and there.
Yes.
Yeah. We live in a pretty heavily wooded part of town, and there's still just random shelling going off every here and there. So it's again, no particular agenda. So audience, any of y'all talking back to us, the dozen or so of you that are here watching us, if you got anything in particular you wanted to ask us about, throw it out there. There's all kinds of stuff we can be talking about, whether it's Dragoon stuff, whether it's making fun of Ardwulf because he's not here to stop us, or we could talk about Rocky's game and wargaming library that he has started to expansively catalog for everyone to go back and read.
Brand, I just like to sit there and tell folks this game, Amabel's birthday present to all of us, is just awesome. And it's going to be hard to really see, but oh my gosh, I mean, these things will hurt you.
Well, hang on. Let's see if we can't zoom in on you here. Let's get you in the big picture. There we go.
I mean, these are huge.
Inch and a half blocks.
Inch and a half blocks. I mean, that looks awesome on the gaming table. The print, this is interesting. I kudos to Steve out of Blue Panther for coming up with this new technique. If you hate stickering, this may be the answer to all your dreams. I don't know how long it's going to last. That's going to be part of my play test, is to see, rubbing Buddha's belly or Napoleon's hair to see, which one's going to last longer. But Amabel really hit it out of the block with this. No pun intended. Did an awesome job. The game itself is just really neat. For all the folks out there who, talk about war games and it's all hex and chit and you have a CRT and everything. Lots of interesting mechanics. Nothing special, just a good, interesting combination of mechanics that putting it all together. And my gosh, it just works. So that was a great present from Amabel for all of us gamers.
Well, our boy Cyrano has popped up in the chat here, and I suspect he will be fairly happy that that there's no sticker. Well, actually, it'll be Mrs. Cyrano that's very happy that there's no stickering required, given his rolling case full of CNC blocks that somebody had to sit down and sticker. So, Mr. Cyrano, sir, this is a family show. We would appreciate you putting the kibosh on that kind of talk there. You want to rub your bony, you go rub your bony. Like, just leave the rest of us out of
it. We're not going to go there. It's family. Okay.
Yes. So, Steve did have copies of that at Origins at the shared booth that Catastrophe and Blue Panther were splitting, and it sold a couple of copies. I mean, we saw folks walking out of there with stuff. One of the more surprising ones that we saw at Origins, the Historical Game Company, who does a lot of Age of Gunpowder, American theater sorts of stuff. So a lot of French and Indian War, Civil War, American Revolution stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These guys. So when I do Tuesday Newsday, like I will pop open the Tuesday Newsday tabs on the browser, and I think I'm up to 87 or 88 tabs at this point. Over half of those are publishing companies or game publishers. And I'm just looking for what's new this week. What haven't I already found somewhere else through one of their newsletters or social media feeds or something? What's new this week? And the Historical Game Company's website didn't move for 18 months. So I took them out of rotation. And then we get to Origins, and there's Steve with like 14 different titles from the Historical Game Company. I'm like, all right, they're back in rotation. I guess they got some games for sale now. So that was kind of cool to see. So, yeah, Mountain started it. So Cyrano, while technically that may be true, I'm not sure he put it quite in those terms the way you did. Yeah. So there was a lot of stuff from White Dog, a lot of stuff from Hollandspiel, and a lot of stuff from Historical Game Company, all on Blue Panther shelves that he was selling there, and some good looking stuff. So I ended up bringing home Margaret Thatcher's War, so that may hit the table here shortly.
Good.
I may do a playthrough to that one with that one similar to what I did with the White Tribe on our site, where actually you play it through and kind of dig into sort of how the game worked without necessarily being a narrative AAR the way some of our guys write, but more of a mechanical AAR. Hey, here's what happened each turn and kind of why I did what I did. So that's
I think it's really awesome, the publishers like Blue Panther out there, and how they're I mean, blocks, wooden bits, canvas maps, all these different ways. I mean, even this Siege of Mantua has the battle board is canvas. A nice little touch, but you know what? It really feels great. The map, this one really feels like, I wish it was a canvas map, but it's big and it fits those blocks really well. It all looks beautiful. Their graphic artists are just awesome. It's good to see those game companies get a decent publisher support, that they can put out these nice, really quality products. And okay, $50. That's not bad, especially in terms of today. I'm looking at some of the games that, oh geez, it's only $125. You know what? I'll stick to Amabel. It's okay.
Yeah. If you haven't seen the production of Zermatt, the finished box for Zermatt, which was the big box one that Catastrophe Games most recently released, big thick tiles because it's a random map each time, and you're not. It's not like Carcassonne where you're building the map as you play. You have a random map laid out of 12 or 16 tiles, and then you're moving around that, but it changes each time how your tiles are configured, and that also changes your victory conditions because the cards in there determine what it is you're trying to accomplish. So each scenario is going to be different. There's a lot of replayability in it for the way you can change up the map and the victory conditions you can try to meet as a part of that through the game. So that's, again, it's a much thicker box. It's a 2 or 2.5 inch box, which is way bigger than most of those things that Steve ships from Blue Panther.
Yeah,
it's a well done product. It's a pretty meaty box of stuff there.
Yeah, if all of you folks are used to the standard Hollandspiel, thin box, this one's just like the blocks. It's a thick box. So shows that they're moving along in the world. And I think it also,
there's the Zermatt box. I suspect they are of a similar thickness.
I'd also have to say that remember too that we really should be thanking Mark Herman for this design. I mean, his children's game didn't do well, so that's why Amabel had all the blocks sticking around, or sitting around. So that's how they got pushed around, and now we got a game out of it. So thank you, Mark Herman, for Rivet. Yes, Rivet deserves some recognition
for Rivet not selling, and therefore we had extra pieces to work with.
Exactly.
That's not exactly how Table Battles came about, but a similar backstory there of they had a lot of wooden sticks left over because they needed them for one specific Berg game, and they had a ton of the sticks left over. So they started designing something that they could do with the sticks, and Amabel came out with table battles. And I think 17 different iterations of table battles later, between the regular one, the ancient one, the dinosaur one, and all the expansions, you've got a whole lot of little toothpicks being used for table battles at this point.
And it's a great game for it.
Yeah. So similar story there. All right. So I don't know who's jumping off a Napoleonic Bridge. Hethwell seems to be happy with what we get, printed MDF for the board game. So Hethwell's shopping for game boards at Home Depot or whatever they have that's equivalent to that in Portugal. Jim's still rubbing a bony, and so Mark and Richard, welcome to the stream, and we apologize for the rest of these yutzes. Sorry about that. Tuna still can't hear what we're saying, so that's cool. We can say whatever. Other folks that are here and watching, feel free to chime in and jump in and say hi, and we'll at least verbally wave at you from the show here. We did in fact hit double digits, which is cool considering we pulled all this together at 3:30 in the afternoon when we found out Gary wasn't going to be going live today. And we still haven't exceeded what Jim normally pulls in for a Saturday night, one of his Saturday Night Fights broadcasts. Howdy, Andrew. And so that's for those of you that don't know, our boy in the chat, Jim Ozarski, Cyrano, is streaming Wednesday night, Thursday night, Saturday night, occasional Tuesdays, occasional Fridays. The Saturday Night Fights has been a regular feature with the Armchair Dragoons going back pre-pandemic. We started 2018, I think, is actually when we first started streaming some of his games, and several thousand hours of game later at this point, Jim and the guys are playing Tabletop Simulator, and he just flips on the stream and lets it go, and you get to sit there, hang out, watch the guys play all night, or in some cases over multiple nights, because I think we're 3 sessions in for the Waterloo campaign in the Snappy Nappy campaign system they've been playing, and they're not close to done. It's going to be a bit. So Carl, welcome. Achilles, welcome. And Mark, welcome. I'm going to mispronounce Mark's last name. I think it's Delisle, but I'm sure. So
Brant, I got a question for you.
Oh boy.
What historical games do you find accessible?
Oh geez. All right. Let me see if I can pull this up on the side screen, because this is our buddy Rocky here is making fun of, well, not making fun. I'm
making fun.
Okay, we can make fun. He's referencing Harold here. And so Harold Buchanan decided that Twitter was boring and he wanted to start a fight. And so he started asking people.
Harold never starts fights. He just wants conversations, discussions.
Sure, go with that. What board games have made historical gaming more accessible? All right, so this is going to be fun. First of all, I'm irked that we didn't get mentioned in that whole list, but all right, whatever. Like, those are all really smart people that you should be asking anyway, before you get to us as it is. But one of the challenges, and this came up elsewhere in the conversation, is the term historical gaming has changed a bit over the last couple of years. And so whereas old folks looking at war games have frequently known them as historical gaming, and for a long time, like, the historical gaming category at the Origins Awards was the wargaming category. The historical minis category was the minis wargaming category. As at the time that term came into use, non-historical board games were Monopoly and Parcheesi and Sorry, and so there wasn't ever really going to be a ton of confusion there. But now you've got Pandemic Rome won the Origins Award for historical board game not too long ago, 3-4 years ago. It is in fact a board game that takes place in a specific historical period. You can't argue with that definition, really. And I'm not trying to start a definitional war. Rocky, Lord knows we've argued about what's a war game for years, long enough. And that's fine. Like, I'm not trying to start that big war amongst the war gamers. But the reality is, for non-war gamers, if you start talking about historical gaming, their first thought isn't wargaming. It's Jamaica, Puerto Rico, the pandemic Rome, viticulture. It's games that take place in a specific historical milieu somewhere. Tree Frog Games had a great game called London a couple of years ago, which is rebuilding London from the Great Fire. Fantastic game. Very historical board game kind of thing. It's a city builder. It's not a war game. It's not even close to a war game. Nobody's going to confuse it for a war game. It is very much a historical game. And so when Harold's asking a question about what's made historical gaming more accessible, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, viticulture, pandemic Rome, and because that's what a lot of people consider to be historical gaming these days. What do you do with that? So,
well, if you're a bunch of war gamers,
some of what people were saying, but including our buddy Jim Ozarski here, Rocky, chime in.
If you're a bunch of war gamers, the first thing you do is you hijack the thread, and you start talking about your niche little hobby, which is where this one went, and it went that way really quickly. I mean, sure, some people started off talking about coin and stuff like Undaunted and the like, but very quickly it devolved into let's talk about war games as historical games, what makes war games accessible and the like. So if you guys haven't seen it, it's actually to me, it was a very good, very constructive thread. There's a lot of good discussion back and forth, a lot of, we didn't go, it didn't go off the rails too far, too many places. But there's a lot.
It did. It's just that the percentage of good comments was abnormally high, that where it did start off the rails, you didn't notice as much.
Yeah, normally those branches went off and died someplace rather quickly. But overall, I mean, it's a great discussion for designers and for players to look at it and think about the questions. What is accessible? What makes the game welcoming? What makes the hobby welcoming and not welcoming? What sort of players? What sort of designers? What sort of publishers work to make it better or not? Yes, I saw Stratego in there, so we covered all the bases.
But as a starting point, okay, I mean, it's artificially balanced sides and an artificially balanced terrain map, both of which are manipulatable. But the idea of unit differentiation that Stratego had that Risk did not is not a bad thing. And when you're describing war games to someone who has no idea what you're talking about as a frame of reference, putting Stratego pieces on a Risk map isn't a bad starting point for a discussion. It is an oversimplification. Okay, sure. I'm scrolling through here. I'm not going to blow open all of the reply threads, but I'm just trying to scroll through here so people get a sense of sort of what was discussed.
A lot.
So just I'm looking in some of the comments here. Jeff Beeler's asking, what are the best war games about the 4th of July? Anything that involves blowing up your neighbor's house, I think probably qualifies. Michael Quigley saying, if wargaming is I'm saying all this stuff. I've got the show button. I can just pop the.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Well, let's back up a moment. Best 4th of July war games. I mean, something that's easily accessible. Hint, hint. Washington's War. I absolutely love 1775 Rebellion. Two very, very good games that 1775 Rebellion Academy Games even sells a teacher's guide to go with it. Right, so you can do even some homeschool, but it is an awesome way to help teach everyone about the American Revolution and about the independence of our country. So I mean, those two right there got to be the top.
On the tactical level, Hold the Line is a pretty good one to jump in.
Hold the Line series. Yep. I mean, if you want to go to the coin version, Harold's Liberty or Death is a very awesome implementation of coin for the American insurrection, as he calls it.
I have a couple of. It's a fun game, and any game that has a character in it named Brant, right? That's gonna win points with me. But I do have some issues with that one in that I think the full length campaign game is a little broken, but that's just me. So in any event, I'm just sort of randomly scrolling through here just so people can see what some of the discussions are, to see what folks have listed and discussed. And you'll notice if somebody did an actual text analysis of this, there's probably a half a dozen of them that show up over and over and over. Yeah, there we go. Sub search, subs with hats, to which our boy Cyrano automatically replied. So, Jeff, this is a good question. I don't know how much the war game boom of the 70s was driven by those centennials. I was in single digits and I was playing stuff with my dad because dad was cool and I wanted to be like dad. And so, while I started wargaming very young, I did so on my dad's lap and, second seating with him doing stuff. So I was too young to really, aside from the fact there were a shit ton of fireworks in 76, like I don't remember all that much hype about any of it. So
the only game I can recall, and that's because it sits in my collection, I have the 1976 edition of Wooden Ships and Iron Men. It says the special bicentennial edition. So I think at that point there was certainly some marketing to try to take advantage of it, but I don't think how much 76 itself didn't drive the boom. I think from what I see about what games were being published and when, a lot of them were already there. Games like Gettysburg had come out way before then. Avalon Hill's Gettysburg had been featured. Smithsonian was picking them up, but it wasn't necessarily because of the 76 bicentennial. It was a great marketing tool for some games, but I don't think it really changed our hobby in any particular way.
Yeah. If anything, there may have been some more people sort of checking them out because with the discussion of history, there might have been some more folks going, oh, hey, what's this historical game thing going on over here? But I don't know that it was much of a mass market effect.
Yeah, I don't know. When did SPI and Avalon Hill start showing up in like the Sears catalog? I mean, a lot of that to me, not that I have any scientific data, but I don't seem to recall any of that happening until really late 70s, early 80s. It was when it seemed to go more, because of this thing called Dungeons and Dragons. Things. Yeah, I think 2017, 76 came out then, but I don't know how much of that was just driven by the time.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us, and Lord knows Cyrano and I have covered this a lot in other places. There are a lot of us that were those gaming omnivores that, lots of role playing, lots of wargaming. It was all hobby gaming back then, and we were all one tribe. Right. And this is not to turn it into some sort of sociological exploration of when and why and how we split into all these different tribes. But back then you played it all. And my early wargaming experiences were playing with my dad. Because again, dad was cool. I wanted to be like dad. Dad was playing these fun games. I wanted to have fun with dad. But the first time I was sort of playing my own stuff and stepping out and doing my own games was learning some role-playing stuff with some friends in the early 80s. And that friend group moved from role-playing into wargaming fairly quickly because most of our dads were wargamers. So the role-playing thing was ours. That wasn't something that the dads did. That was just us. But we would also borrow some of the parents' war games or had a couple of our own that we would join in as well. All right, let's kill the tweet here. And we'll get back over to us. So
yeah, if you haven't read John Peterson's book, Elusive Shift, that's exactly what he covers, is the early days of Dungeons and Dragons and the development of the wargaming versus the wargaming tribe and the role-playing game RPG tribes, and how they were both many times birthed out of the same but yet grew differently. It's an excellent book to study some of that, or to learn about some of that early history.
Yes. I have not finished Elusive Shift. I haven't read Elusive Shift. It's not that I haven't finished it. You can't finish it if you haven't even started it. So it's on my list of stuff to get to. I was actually looking through some other boxes of stuff here in the office to try and find. At one point, I had a copy of Heroic Worlds. I cannot find it, and I'm pissed because I looked it up on Amazon what it would cost to replace it, and I ain't got that kind of money laying around to replace a paperback book. So somewhere in this office is a copy of Heroic Worlds, and damn it, I'm going to find it because I'm not paying, like I said, I'm not paying that kind of money to replace it. But yeah, Elusive Shift is definitely on my list of stuff that I want to read. Playing the World is another one. I do want to give it a read. I've got the electronic version of the Designers and Dragons series. And I support Shannon's Patreon also. So I've been supporting him for a couple of years with that. And those were a blast. I really wish somebody would do Designers and Dragons for the wargaming world and track all the wargaming companies through the same way that Shannon did all the role-playing companies. So
I was looking for my books here, but I don't see them.
Findle, how you doing? Welcome. Appreciate you joining us. Achilles, I think I already said hi to you. So hi again. And Jeff, we've already popped up here a couple of times. So
Microgames and Ogre. I could not have started my early times without those games.
Yep.
I still have my copies sitting down here. I look at those covers, $2.95. I think I stopped buying them when they reached like $3.95 or $4.95. I mean, just
I managed to never have the original collection of Car Wars, but I had Melee and Wizard and a couple of others, and I did have Warp War, Dimension Demons, I still have some of them up here somewhere. I just have to go looking for them. Now, Car Wars never. The concept always seemed kind of cool, but to me, it always sort of felt like a Mad Max ripoff. And Car Wars actually predated Mad Max, but it just wasn't something that appealed to me. If you're going to be driving vehicles around and blowing stuff up, I'd rather just have a tank and do it. So
you could.
I know, but so
it was.
Ozarski's a fan of Hell Tank.
Oh yes. Hell Tank Destroyer. I mean, again, so much early wargaming, simple mechanics. Oh my God, it uses a hex, a different CRT. So many times it wasn't an odds-based CRT. It was my Hell Tank is firing at your GEV, and here's the cross-reference it and make it work. Different way of doing it, but it all works out. It really was wonderful.
Uh-oh, our buddy Byron is here. Hello, Byron.
Yep. Car Wars.
Yeah,
Car Wars went off the. I liked Car Wars with cars, and then you had the big rigs, and then you got some motorcycles, and at that point is where I sort of dropped out of it. But you can go into helicopters and tanks and boats and everything else.
Yeah. What's fun about the crew that's chiming in with us tonight is it's only about half Americans, so the other half just really don't care about the fact that we're going to end a little early to get all the Americans home to watch fireworks, or out of the office to go watch fireworks. So that's it. Look, if you're sitting out at a tailgate somewhere or a cookout, waiting for the fireworks to start, and you're watching us on the phone, so you don't have to interact with the rest of the family, we are happy to provide that public service to you. Let us know, because I'm kind of curious how many of you guys are actually doing that. So pop up in the chat and say something.
So a couple of folks here have mentioned the micro games, and somebody mentioned like some S&T, and somebody mentioned the Series 120, the GDW games, and that was actually part of the discussion that Harold kicked off is accessible games. There was a thread down there that ran into smaller, less expensive intro, or not even gonna call it intro, just call it less expensive games that can help folks get into the hobby. And I think there were some good comments there about how, we sort of lacked that. And I don't know if that's all just a matter of production costs. Do we just have to, the days of $2.95 games are never going to happen again, unless you're talking $295 games on Kickstarter.
Or just off the shelf from the Knowledge Company.
Jeez.
I love when TKC does they do a bundle sale, and the bundle sale is still a car payment for a Mercedes, right? I mean,
around here where I live, there's a BGG thread for a local flea market. Yeah. And I just, I do not understand. I'm sorry, I just do not understand some of these people that are trying to sell their $400 Kickstarter packages unopened for $400 on the flea market. It's like, I don't know what you are doing. I don't know what you're trying to do now, but that's when I see something on a flea market, it's 3 digits. That's all. It's pretty much a non-starter for me.
That's crazy. Wayne, we're not exactly talking about First War Games. We were building off a Harold's thread online for, what made historical gaming more accessible. And we've sort of set aside the idea that the historical gaming term has changed from when many of us started to what it is today. But part of that accessibility for a lot of us was, what's that first war game? Not a lot of us started with Red Star, White Star. I mean, there's somebody out there that did, but there's not many of us. Most of us started with something a little less challenging, with War at Sea, with something a little on the easier side there. The Fendel, I feel you, right? It's been that way around here too. So I'm definitely there with you. Hethel's got a good point here, sort of the definition of, well, let's get it back up there. Definition of an accessible game. Battletech was definitely one that a lot of folks started with because the giant robots look cool and it's something that attracts attention and folks want to see and they want something to play with. And that's totally cool. So, have fun with that. And every year at Origins, well, not every year because they didn't have them there this year, but the guys from Catalyst Game Labs at Origins a lot of years have the giant, we jokingly call them my first Battletech. They're these giant floor mat, hex mat things where, I mean, it's 18-inch hexes that sort of all fit together on the floor. And the mechs are easily 2.5 feet tall. And they've got 7, 8, 9-year-olds crawling around on the floor, moving these things around, rolling these oversized foam dice. And that's, for the kids, that's cool. And I'm sure they're disappointed when they walk over to the Catalyst Games booth and they can't buy the foot-tall mechs to take home and play on their living room floor, that they got to buy those little bitty 3-inch models.
I'm sure somebody's selling that STL file someplace.
Probably. Jeff, if SPI still does capsule war games, I'm curious where they're doing it because I don't think SPI is a thing anymore. Decision Games still does a lot of small ones based on a lot of SPI designs, but
the folio games.
Yeah. So Tuna does ask the very fair question: what happened to Ardwulf? What happened to Ardwulf is that his ISP forgot that the P stands for provider, and they've decided to be an internet service non-provider, and they haven't gotten him hooked up yet and sorted out. It's been this 5 or 6 day odyssey. He's got a beautiful 5-minute rant video posted to his channel complaining about how screwed up the service stuff was, but that's why he's not live tonight and why we jumped in to fill in for him. So that's what's going on for tonight. It's just us trying to help out. So heard that he's on strike. Yeah, he's renegotiating against himself for more scotch. That's what he's doing there.
Well, he's got to balance a house payment with his scotch now. So
yes, there is that. So Jeff, that is definitely a point. There are some games that at the intro level start around $50, and that is problematic. And in terms of making games more accessible,
$50.
One of the things I've done a variety of professional development sessions over the years for middle school and high school educators for ways in which you can integrate games in the classroom and different ways in which you can do things. And one of the best practices is always, especially early on, don't try to teach the kids the rules. Set the game up, tell the kids these are the decisions you get to make, and you do the rules for them, at least for the first few turns, before you start trying to slowly introduce the rules to them to where they can understand better how to manipulate the game instead of focusing on those historical decisions or whatever the key decisions in the game are. The challenge you run into, and that I've seen with a bunch of the educators that are doing these things, is that even if the kids love the game, you've got some 7th to 8th grade kid going home to mom, we're playing this really cool game in school. Can we get a copy of it? And mom says, sure, what is it? And first of all, it's not on the shelf at Target, right? So that immediately rules out like 2/3 of how do you find this thing. And then once they do find the local hobby game store that happens to have it, first of all, let's face it, a lot of hobby game store folks tend to look down their noses when mom walks in with the kid in tow, or mom walks in without the kid in tow and clearly doesn't know very well what she's asking for, but then she sees the $70 price tag. And for some of these kids in some of these schools, that $70 price tag is their grocery budget for the week. And that's a problem. You'd love to catch the kids, but that's a problem. And Byron, you're right. There are a lot of great print and play war games available. How do you get that in the hands of the newbie such that they're able to play without it turning into a craft project ahead of time? Right. That's, that starts to become another barrier to entry for accessibility purposes.
See, but there, Brant, I think that's actually where it's not the new player's fault. I think there is amongst many of the war gamers and I'll say it's probably many of the American war gamers because we have better access to the stores with the games. We don't like P&P. And I don't know why, but I mean, one of the best intro war games out there is Battle for Moscow, which is all P&P. Yeah, it's work. Folks like Hollenspiel do go through great efforts to put their games up in P&P. You can buy these games very, low cost. Do P&P, and at the end of the day, the hardest part is taping, the sheets together. For the larger maps, and maybe a little bit of some craftiness, like you print it out and then glue it down to a chipboard and cut along the edges. But it's not impossible. But there just seems to be this cultural, not in my game collection attitude that really holds a lot of us back.
Yeah. That look. There are some folks that would love to have rounded corners and yet don't want to have to sit there and clip them. So they love the fact that there are war games now shipping with pre-rounded corners. So there are some folks that are going to go way overboard on the arts and crafts projects, right? Most of those guys are minis gamers. But there are some folks that are willing to sit there and build print and play stuff themselves. There are a lot of folks, and Lord knows Cyrano is one of them, that are more than happy to just do everything in Tabletop Simulator where it's all already done for you. You need to paint some more minis, Control C, Control V, right? You got more minis.
There you go.
So Tabletop Simulators probably helped with that at least some. But I think there's definitely a difference between the arts and crafts gamers and the just give me a game to play kinds of gamers. So, Michael's got a point here. We want the thing and we want it complete and ready to go. Look, there was the cult of the pre-painted mini for a bunch of years there. So,
and see, that's where I think a lot of people need to pay attention to Steve Jones out of Blue Panther. If he can print on blocks, guess what? And if he can do it at a cost that is less than shipping stickers, all the better. And we're all going to be better off for the hobby for that.
Yep. So Jeff's got a thing in here, the counter count. You don't have to clip them all. But the -20 series that Victory Point Games did for a long time, GMT collected a handful of the Napoleonic ones into a collected box, kind of a quad pack game that had Salamanca and Waterloo and a couple other of the -20 games. There were a variety of those. Bulge 20 was another one that you had a bunch of the -20 games that were intentionally low counter density games to try and keep those down. One of my favorites for making things accessible is an introductory level game. Tank on Tank from Lock and Load, the Tank on Tank series, are a blast to play. Unfortunately, at full price, like $50, and that's a lot to justify for what's in the boxes. But as a starter level game, those things are a ton of fun. There's no CRTs. It's basic dice. It's move, range, defense, and you're rolling dice based on the number of vehicles trying to shoot or you're rolling 2d6 no matter what. You're adding modifiers based on the number of vehicles shooting. And it's a very easy game to pick up. You can teach the rules in under 10 minutes. You can play a full game in under an hour. And I know because we did it yesterday at Gamers Armory for War Game Day. So that was absolutely there.
I'll tell you what, if they don't want to clip counters, just talk to Compass Games. And I don't know if you can see, this is my, I'm pretty sure that this is my case geld.
Yep.
If I shake this up a couple more times, I think they're all going to come out. I'm not going to be separating anything. So hey, publishers are doing their part to help us.
Yeah. Wayne, you're right in that buy a game and have it ready to play. When you're buying something off the shelf, that's absolutely the expectation. And I don't think anybody's going to try and claim otherwise unless you're intentionally buying something with unpainted minis that you're going to have to paint. And I don't think anybody's disputing that. I think the print and play model is one of those things that, the internet distribution allows for things to get around a lot easier than just what is my local store stock. I can go get whatever I want. But what's happened is the labor has now shifted from the printing press to my office desk, right? And now I'm the printing press that has to print and assemble the components of the game. So if that's what you're getting into for a print and play, then you don't accidentally end up with one of those, I guess is the way to say that. That's what you're getting into when you buy it. And if you didn't, you just didn't read the instructions closely enough, and it's kind of your own fault. So it's absolutely valid that you're not going to have an interest in an arts and crafts project. And if that's not your thing, then don't, that's cool. But the folks that end up with print and plays are kind of doing it intentionally. Like that's what they're after. Tuna, we'd have to ask our boy Cyrano. I'm not really sure. We'd have to ask.
It's probably DLC.
Byron, you're right. The same thing could be said about Maneuver, although you spelled it wrong for the way they spell the game. But Maneuver from GMT is a great one out of the box. Modular game board, 8 different armies in the box. You can do a lot of historical scenarios, or you can have the Americans face off with the Ottomans if you feel like it. So there is a lot of great replayability out of the box for Maneuver. And again, the counter density, it's 16 counters on the map max at any one point in time. So, physical counters like blocks do make things more accessible. Yeah, the minis do look cool. Look, that's one of the reasons things like Memoir 44 and the Sergeant's Minis games stick out on the table, is the minis look cool.
The toy factor. It's a toy factor. Hey, I have these little tiny men, little tiny soldiers, little tiny tanks, little tiny airplanes, and we're going to pew pew and go around. There's a lot to be said that the immersive effect, the toy factor, just it looks like a toy and you love playing with it.
So yesterday was War Game Day over at Gamers Armory, local game store here in the suburbs of Raleigh. And look, you folks that have been around the Dragoons for more than 10 minutes know I'm going to extol the virtues of Gamers Armory. It's one of the best war game stores in the country. And we've done live broadcasts from there in the past, done a lot of pictures, and we've recorded podcasts there in the past. Great store. We got War Game Day put back on the calendar. So the first Sunday of every month, if you're in driving distance of Raleigh, come join us for War Game Day. We had Memoir 44 on one end of the table and Tank on Tank on the other end of the table. Guess which one got more people to stop and look at it? It's the toy factor. Now, if we did Tank on Tank with the Axis and Allies minis, maps, and tanks on the map, we'd have gotten more people to stop and look at it because the toy factor. But we had Memoir 44 with the figures on one end of the table and Tank on Tank with the counters on the other end. Folks stopped and looked at Memoir 44, not Tank on Tank. It is what it is. Now, none of them stopped to play with us. Most of them were there for the Pokemon event that a couple of dads had organized for their 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. They were all sitting down trading Pokemon cards and hopped up on Mountain Dew. So good for them. That's cool. But the handful of folks that did stop by and wonder what we were doing, the toy factor caught their eye. Absolutely.
Which the toy factor is awesome. The toy factor is expensive.
Yes.
So all those people out there who want an accessible, whatever that word means, war game or accessible historical game, it ain't going to be cheap.
Yeah.
And I'm in America. Inflation sucks. Shipping prices, everything's going up. So you're gonna have to pay more, but you got to find the right pieces of accessible to put it together. And something like the Toy Factor really helps bring people in.
Yeah,
I'll admit it. Yeah.
Richard, I wish you could have been there yesterday also. We would have loved to have had some folks there. We had 3 of us sitting there playing and 4 or 5 total stopped by. Some folks knew they weren't going to have the time to stop and play, but they knew what was going on and wanted to at least come by and say hi. The other thing is, look, it's holiday weekend. We knew there were going to be a couple of folks out of town and that weren't going to be around to join us. So we knew we were going to be missing some folks. But that is what it is. I'm curious. So I know some of the folks in the audience probably have their regular game haunts that they hit. How many of y'all have a regularly organized public war game event with any regularity in your areas? So again, not you and 5 friends that have the regular meetup one Saturday a month or something, but something out in public where you can send out the open invitation and whoever wants to just stops by and grabs a seat and joins y'all. So that's I'm just curious how many of y'all that might apply to.
I'll just say in the DC area here, surprise, surprise, there is a ASL gamers group, and they meet pretty good. I always see their announcements. I haven't made one to myself, but I always see their announcements. They're out there strong.
DC Conscripts?
Yes, DC Conscripts.
Yep.
DC Conscripts are out there and they're playing ASL of all the games a wargamer could play.
Yeah.
They're out there
doing. There's a couple of Dragoons that are in that area and play with the Conscripts. Trail Runner is one of them. So, where we go. So our boy Cyrano says define area.
Area is on a map and it's not a hex. How does that work, Jim?
Really what I'm thinking is, close enough that you would regularly become a participant at one of these events. Again, Rich, where'd he go? So Rich Whitmer made a comment about played there a bunch before he moved to Pinehurst. Pinehurst is within an hour's drive to Gamers Armory. If you were planning on spending the afternoon for War Game Day once a month, that's certainly a drivable thing. Drive up, spend 3 hours, 4 hours playing games, drive home. No problem. It's a half day total that you're losing there. So I think if we're talking in the area, something that is close enough that you're reasonably comfortable commuting on a regular basis to a monthly or weekly, public. But again, I'm curious about public game sessions, not, not your 5 buddies that meet in somebody's game room at their house, but something that you could put a sign up on a bulletin board and have random people kind of wander in and go, hey, I wanted to come play. So, here's Carl, Gameology in Pasadena. So that's great. 4 to 20, depending on the month.
I've seen his postings. Those always look like awesome events.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely there. What do we got? Jeff Beeler, 2 gaming events a week, Tuesday and Saturday. Oh, well, but take a war game with you and see what happens.
He took Pandemic Rome. He did.
Yeah. Take one of those more accessible games. Take Ogre. See what happens with Ogre. Just curious. What do we got? Shenandoah Valley twice a month. So, Andrew, is it a store? Is it a public library? What do you guys do? I'm just curious. So, so Carl, I've seen the price of gas in California. I hope you're taking the bus everywhere else. So, Mega Game Makers, yeah. So so welcome, Dave. Because I know it's late for you. Good Lord, man, it's after midnight for you. What the heck's the matter with you?
The fireworks kept him up.
Dude's in England. What is he fireworking?
They should be.
Probably. Thank God those Americans are gone.
Yeah.
So Andrew says they're getting together at a game store. So that's cool. No, that's awesome that you guys get a twice a month gaming thing up there in the Shenandoah Valley. So that's really cool. Hethel's got the Eurogames Cafe. But again, over in Europe, it's a little different. Some of those minis clubs, those private clubs and organizations. There's a dude online, Nevermore, used to post some awesome stuff from I want to say it was the Grimsby Wargame Society. Those guys have a big clubhouse they would regularly play in, but the minis boards that those guys would photograph always looked, I mean, museum diorama quality stuff. What was great about this, and so minis dudes in the audience, if you're listening, this is here's a big hint on all of this. When you're photographing your minis tables, have like a large backdrop you can hold at the edge of the table so you don't get all the fat guys standing in the background. Because these dudes used to have like a painted sky with a bunch of clouds, and they kind of hold it behind all the minis. So when you took the picture, you didn't have all the shelves full of crap in the background. You know, you had this nice, clean background to the minis tableau that was laid out in front of you. It looked really good.
But on a more serious note about the UK minis gaming, I see a lot of comments, and I love reading about their participation games that they do over there. And I think that's just something, that sort of attitude, that sort of approach to gaming is something that we could really, us, even though they were the losers of the American Revolution, we could still learn something from them, and bring more of that participation gaming style over here to the States.
Yeah,
we won one war, we can win another.
One of the comments buried in one of those threads that was either directly connected to Harold's discussion or broken off to it slightly. There was somebody complaining that the internet's caused the death of conventions, and no, it hasn't. Demonstrably has not. The plague might have screwed with the conventions. There's plenty more conventions, not of the digital variety, that are happening now than were before, just because the population of gamers has gone up. But one of the other things that's happened, and this is something that there's actual, like, you can track the trend lines, and it's correlation, not causation. The Columbus Area Board Gaming Society started in the early 2000s because they just recently celebrated their 20th anniversary. Membership there consistently rose even as internet diffusion expanded across the American public. The guys at CABS were more organized than many other places out there. They regularly get 120 to 150 on a Friday night for a club meeting. That's a Friday. That's not a convention. That's not a special event. That's Friday, right? Now, they're not all war gamers. 10% of our war gamers. You got 15 war gamers in that building sitting around playing stuff. A bunch of the OCS things that you've seen hit the shelves lately. I watched Beyond the Rhine. When I lived in Columbus, I watched them play test Beyond the Rhine for three and a half years. They ran the whole game. They switched sides. They ran it back again, and then they ran it back a third time with highlighted maps and handwritten counters. And they were sitting there play testing the, Beyond the Rhine from a variety of different scenario viewpoints, trying to make sure that things came out the way they sort of were supposed to. But CAB's membership, because they had a couple of fairly forceful personalities that got them organized and then, promoted it nonstop everywhere they possibly could. I remember one of the morning shows, one of the local TV morning shows in Columbus, did a live broadcast from CABS one weekend. They were there Saturday morning for 4 hours that, every 30 minutes or so they check it. And now we're going to go back over to CABS to Fred Barnwell, who's live at the Columbus Area Board Gaming Society. Fred, what are they playing now? And they do like a 5-minute live hit twice an hour from CABS.
As long as they weren't airdropping turkeys, we're okay.
Yeah, no kidding. But wrong city. It's about an hour and a half down the road.
It's same state.
Same state. But CABS just got organized, and now they've got a big, active, thriving game club that has a huge library. At Buckeye Game Fest, I had to use a panoramic photo to get all of the library in the picture in the room where the library was stored. It's there if you want it to be, I guess, is the best way to do it. It just takes some people to get it organized and to get it up and running. And that takes time. Again, CABS didn't get there in 6 weeks. CABS got there over 20 years. But it was somebody that spent a lot of time with it. So
Brant, lightning round.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time here. I'm starting to get more fireworks crescendoing coming up. So lightning round, real quick. Your first war game, and would you use it as an accessible war game to introduce folks to the hobby today? Start.
I would not. I think the first thing I can remember pushing counters around with my dad was Third Reich from Avalon Hill back in the late 70s. The first one that I kind of learned to play with some friends, I do think is an accessible one, sadly out of print. And that was the old War at Sea, the Avalon Hill War at Sea. And that was that D&D group that I talked about that I had in the early 80s. That's what we, that was the first one that we kind of got out ourselves and pulled out the rules and tried to figure out what are we doing. So that was where I kind of branched off from Dad and started doing my own thing. I would not recommend Third Reich as an accessible war game for anybody. What about you? First one you did?
First one, Panzer. Jim Day's Panzer by Yaquinto, and very quickly went to the whole Panzer A8 armor series. Friends and I, we played that to death. We quickly pivoted to other war games. Third Reich was in there. I remember an epic Third Reich birthday party, all night Third Reich.
Okay.
We pivoted to Starfleet Battles. I mean, you speak about a game that is high, accountants in space, but we all made it work. We were all middle schoolers. Yeah. And we I even had some friends of mine, one guy in particular, he still has design credits for the TK06, I think. TK06 is a Tholian Klingon hybrid ship, and he did the original design, submitted it to Task Force, and he got it published, and it's still there as a credit. No, so I mean, it's accessible, no, but I think the trick sort of that we stumbled into there is those first games, Panzer A8 Armor, were quite literally a miniatures game on a hex map. Yeah. Which really, in some ways, helped us learn. I mean, so, yeah. Yeah.
So, something that I've had success using, I'm not even sure it's still in print, but the old Avalon Hill gamette, the little baby game boxes, the Robin Hood game. You wrote a review of a very derivative version of that Robin Hood game for us about 10 months ago or so.
A while ago.
Yeah, but the old Avalon Hill Robin Hood game, there are absolutely war game elements in it. There's combat as a part of it all. It's area movement. It's, you got to build your forces and everything. But it's an adventure story that everybody's seen the Disney Robin Hood, right? We know who the Robin Hood characters are. And that's a story folks were familiar with. And to make a war game out of that made it very accessible. It was material that they already sort of knew and understood and could run with. So awesome. So that's an easy one to go with. We are getting very close to the top of the hour. So, Rocky, thank you very much for joining, especially kind of, me texting you like shortly before dinner. Hey, Gary's out. You want to do this? And you're like, yeah, sure. Whatever.
Yeah. I just want to say, everyone, thanks a lot, for all your support to the hobby. It's good to see all you here in the chat. It was good to see a lot of the same names showing up in the, let's explain to Harold, what wargaming is. Thread on Twitter. It's good to see the hobby doing well, and I hope that someday we will get to see the conventions and we will all get to be able to get together. But for right now, 4th of July sounds like it's kicking off with a vengeance. My boys are outside. I need to go make sure that they come back with all their arms and legs. Yeah. So I'm gonna check out here, and everyone happy 4th.
Good luck with that. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate everyone being here. Rocky, appreciate you being here. And folks that jumped in the chat. Guys, it's been awesome. Sorry we couldn't drag it out for 2 hours. But, hey, you got an hour out of it. And Gary will be back next week, and we'll all go make fun of it.
Maybe.
Look, if Gary's not back next week and we got to fill in, this might actually be a little more organized. But in the meantime, this was fun, and we appreciate those of you that jumped on the train with us here. And thanks for being here. So from Dragoon HQ and from Rocky HQ there, we're going to say goodnight, and everybody have a beautiful evening.